You're listening to the Real Answers for First-Time Homebuyers series, a special run of episodes answering the most common questions from real renters based on thousands of buyer consultations and the latest market data over the last 18 months from everywhere on the internet. For the full series, head to the podcast library and get the answers you need to cut through the confusion of buying your first home. Let's get into it. Is now a good time to buy a home? How much down payment do you actually need? How do you get the best loan for you? And what do you need to do to get approved for a loan? And how much home can you actually really afford? Well, let's get you some clarity on these questions and a whole bunch more so we can crush the confusion and the complexity of your first-time home buying planning. Let's do it.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time home buyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time home buyers.
Hola, mi amigas and amigos. Welcome. What is up in your world, my How to Buy a Homies? I'm your host, David Sidoni, working very hard to start a revolution. Yeah, gang, this is more than an education and empowerment podcast. There is an urgent need for the entire first-time home buying experience to be radically overhauled. And if something's going to be done radically, you know I'm in on that. It's time to strip this process away from the real estate corporations. Take it away and put the power back in the hands of the people. So welcome to the revolution. I get it. Maybe that's a bit too dramatic for some of you. Another way to frame it is that here on this podcast, we offer a no pressure, no BS learning environment. So you can finally get the inside scoop on how buying your first home really goes down and what you can do to maximize and protect yourself all throughout the process. But you can't stop me from trying to say that I'm starting a revolution one buyer at a time, because I want to change this warped system, and I'm going to do it from the inside out. And one of my biggest frustrations that pissed me off and made me quit my broker and start this podcast is because for 20 years now, I've been helping first-time home buyers, and every question that I see first-time home buyers asking different people, they end up getting 5 different answers. And every person who gives them an answer says they are absolutely correct. Whether it's Google, Reddit, YouTube, a comment section, your family or your friends, or even different pros from the real estate industry, they're going to give them different answers. And all of them come in with such certainty that they're correct, yet their answers are polar opposites and totally conflicting. Always do this, never do that. This is going to save you thousands, but this is a sure way to get scammed and ripped off. And then sometimes that's the exact same thing. Or you're going to hear people say, you absolutely always do this. And then someone else says, there's no way that someone in your position can do this. All right, so which is it? Homies, I feel your pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to address your most asked questions. And there's no agenda for me except to turn anyone who listens to this into the most knowledgeable and educated first-time home buyer that they can be. Because buying a home for the very first time, it can feel, truly, I use overwhelmed all the time, but that's not a big enough adjective. It truly doesn't cover all of it. Think about right now. Between the economic news, you've got inflation, tariffs, healthcare concerns. You've got debt, both national and personal. And then, you've got the economy in general kind of up in the air. That's going to drive you crazy. Now let's drop on top of that specifically some of the home buying things that are freaking you out. High prices, low inventory, high mortgage rates, not to mention just even getting a mortgage and all the headaches and complexities that come with that. Yeah, I feel it. First-time home buyers have a lot of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the biggest and most frequently asked questions in this series. Now, I did a version of this back in 2024. That's episodes 241 to 244. And I'm sure JT is going to put that in the notes. Thank you, JT. I highly recommend that you go back and you listen to those. It could be a great supplement to this series, and you can get deeper into some of your more burning questions. What I've done for this series of questions is I've compiled the 20 most frequently asked questions and concerns from first-time home buyers over the last 18 months. Now, why that time frame, you ask? Well, if you weren't aware, post-pandemic, mortgage rates dropped to 3%, sometimes a little bit even below 3%. They slowly went up to 5% in 2022. And then in 2023, inflation caught up to the post-pandemic bailout economic situation that we had. And boom, 18 months ago, we saw rates shoot from 5 to 8% for a home loan. And for the last year and a half, people are seeing 7% looks like it's about the new average for a mortgage. And all the while, during that time, home prices were continuing to rise. If you're sitting there right now today thinking, how the hell do I do this? Trust me, you're not alone. Since when you buy a home sometimes can affect major portions of the entire process, that's why I looked at the last 18 months. What questions are people asking in this market? So these questions were identified by analyzing recent search trends from Google queries, popular discussions on forums, and from social media. We also looked at places like Reddit and Quora and real estate Q&A places. And not to mention, we threw in a whole bunch of surveys of homebuyer concerns. Now, using that data, I ranked them by overall frequency, as well as the popularity across both search behavior and the online discussions. For you listening, a homie with this podcast in your ear holes, if you've listened to a few different episodes, you might be, shall we say, further down the rabbit hole than the rankings of these questions. They might prioritize them a little differently than where you're at right now. So, considering the fact that most people start with the basic questions online, and a lot of them actually drop off before they get into the deeper questions. Maybe they just bail before they go any further down the rabbit hole, of which you are way down. So don't worry about it. All good. I've got you covered. If you already have a clear answer to some of the more popular initial internet inquiries, let the answers I give here just reinforce your decision to dig deeper into your own research. Now, with that in mind, these 20 questions, they might not even answer everything that you need to know. So if you're looking for something specific, go back and check out the podcast library. Anytime, you can scroll through the titles, look at the topics. There's 350 episodes, for goodness sake. Detailed information is there. You can find what you're looking for. And if you can handle listening to my signature old man, classy, cringy style, drink, by the way, then starting way back at episode 94, the glossary of real estate terms from A to Z, that can really give you a leg up feeling like you understand the lingo. And of course, as always, check out the real life buyer interviews. That's where you hear tons of real world tips from people who actually did this. But for today, what we're going to do is we're going to get into this list of questions reflecting the most common home buying inquiries in aggregate. The cool thing is these answers come directly from your leader of your revolution, with only one answer to each of them and only one goal in mind: to lift the people up by simply downloading everything that I have learned, everything that's ever come from my experience over 20 years as a full-time, first-time homebuyer real estate nerd who studies this stuff 24/7. And I'm looking to get you the crucial edge in your own personal process. Think of this information as if when you Googled a question, the first page came up, had color coding all the way down it. There was red on the results that were BS. There was orange on the results that were a straight up sales pitch, blue for outdated, brown for wrong, and so on and so on. And then on that first page, you see one bright, flashing gold recommendation, shimmering with all kinds of streamers and stuff coming out of it. And that is the actual answer that you're looking for. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, that's what we're going to try to do here today. 20 years of seeing the right and wrong way to do this. 20 years of not just thinking everything that is correct was in my brain, but listening to hundreds of other realtors that I deal with, going to hundreds of seminars, and continually reading thousands of articles and keeping up with what's going on. Not to mention thousands of successful first-time homebuyer consultations, coachings, strategy planning. And that's where we work through and find the actual answers that aren't just theoretical, that have actually helped put people in the right position to buy their own home the right way and the best way. That's the source material to answer all these questions. Okay, enough with the preamble. Let's get to the questions. Question number 1, is now a good time to buy a home, or should I wait? Almost every prospective buyer initially struggles with whether it's the quote unquote right time, air quotes, to buy. I get it. You know what? Over the last 18 months, man, that has intensified. So I'm hearing buy now or wait a lot. And in fact, when I did the research, we found that inquiry is the most searched and discussed thing online. Nobody out there wants to make a mistake, and everyone wants to do this at the best time. So it's a perennial favorite in searches and conversations. And personally, helping tens of thousands of first-time homebuyers myself, I can report that I too get this question a lot. Should I buy now or wait? It can be answered with one simple follow-up to your question. If you do want to buy a home someday, what's your biggest fear right now? Now, how you answer that's going to determine if buying now is better for you, or maybe if you actually should wait. No matter what is going on with the housing market, your fear determines your correct answer. Now, that was very important, so let me say it another way. Because if you're a homie and you tolerate me in your ear holes on the way to work or when you're walking the dog, you know I'm a slave to the math of the rent replacement strategy. The answer to should I buy now or wait does not come immediately. And it doesn't come from a definitive response from some real estate guru who can help you predict where the housing market is going. Nor does it come from an economic forecaster that helps illuminate and predict the perfect ups and downs of the lines on the graph. The answer lies just in what do you fear in purchasing sooner rather than later. Now, your personal fear, your reason for thinking that maybe you want to wait, for some of you, it could mean maybe you should. Maybe your fear has some complexities or some personal things, or, there's some job issues, and maybe you should wait. But for many of you, the reason you're asking is fear of making a mistake, especially you homies out there. When your fears are revealed, one fact mathematically points to the fact that not waiting, even in precarious and unaffordable times like 2025, is still the better equation for you. And that mathematical fact is, since the Revolutionary War, there hasn't been a 10-year period where buying a home was a losing proposition based purely on the price tag of the home. It's not going to be worth less than when you bought it. And of course, that math, that doesn't even take into account the enormously favorable math regarding if you wait, how much rent are you going to be paying that will continually increase versus your time as a homeowner holding an appreciating asset with a fixed monthly payment. Oh, and BT dubs, look, I'm on your side. I'm not stupid. I know that when any first-time homebuyer reaches out and talks to anyone in the real estate or mortgage industry, those professionals shower you with the catchy little mottos for first-time homebuyers, like the best time to buy your first home was yesterday and the second best time is today. Or they tell you things like, it's not how you time the market, it's your time in the market. I even say those things. The problem is, most other people, they just drop those sayings to you with no real explanation. They make the people that are still renting, well, sometimes they make them feel less than. If I was being harsh, I'd say sometimes they make people feel like losers. And that sucks. So suddenly nobody trusts these statements because they feel like the people who have said them are pressuring them. And they're not actually properly guiding those people with their best interests at heart. Now, let's fast forward that to 2025, where we have all those things I talked about. Rising interest rates, high home prices, some guy on YouTube yelling that the crash is coming. Well, now it's way intense. I mean, suddenly there's more doubt than confidence, and you're wondering if you're about to make the biggest financial mistake of your life. Well, here's a little tidbit for you. The market, it just doesn't care about your fear or your feelings. So we need to learn to get past that. If you're financially ready, you got good credit, you got low debt and a solid income, and a realistic idea of what you can afford, that's your green light. That's your confidence. The fear from rates, prices, got to remember, rates and prices, they're just the weather. You need to simply dress accordingly, not sit there and wait for the clouds to part. Here's the truth that I've learned from helping thousands of buyers, and tracking the market for years. You don't buy based on the market. You buy based on you. And if you really pulled back and looked at everything in the last 25 years, absolute best time to buy would have been 2012. And more recently, like in the past 6 years or so, 7 years, 8 years, back in 2019, I told buyers, hey, look at the math, look at the data. I know that homes have gone up in prices from 2012 to 2019, and I know you might be afraid, and I know you might be trying to time the market right now, but mathematically, it's going to cost you more to keep renting if you wait for prices to drop. And so the naysayers came screaming at me, telling me that, no way, dude. Market crashed in 2008. It's been going up now 6 years, 7 years. It's totally going to crash again. But I had the data on my side, or data, depending on, I don't know, which way you decide to say it. That data and that analytics was based on one thing. Say it with me now. Low inventory. So back in 2019, I was brand new on the air, and some listeners listened and they bought. Others waited. Unfortunately, guess who's happy now? The people who bought. They're sitting on tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. And let's not forget their monthly payment hasn't increased since 2019. In fact, for most of them, it probably decreased with a refinance. So it's even lower than where they were in 2019. How would you like to still have the same rent you had in 2019, or perhaps even lower? And for anyone who's really thinking they're going to time it because, it's going to be better once they figure out when things go down, let's not forget those people in 2019, they went through a global freaking pandemic, and their home values are still better today than if they'd waited. Which leads us to trying to time the market today. Where are we today? The reason I use that example is because looking at all the data, I figured out we're right here at 2019 all over again. And sure, if we hit a correction, remember, it's going to be a correction, not a crash, because the inventory is too low. I've gone into those numbers on past episodes, and in fact, so much low inventory is a saying on the show. So if we do hit a correction, remember, we hit one from 2019 because of the global freaking pandemic. So if we hit a correction in the next 6 years, just like we did 19 to 25, the math is still better with a rent replacement strategy starting as soon as you can, putting your money to work for you as soon as you possibly can, than it would be trying to time the market. Now, if you're a nerd yelling at your phone saying, yeah, come on, Sidoni, but they didn't have the same high interest rate problem back in 2019. First of all, what's up, fellow nerd? Can we be friends? I love that you think that way. And secondly, yeah, you're right. I mean, the rate in 2019, it was lower than it is now. Even with that change in interest rate from 2019 to today, the long-term math, it still works out in your favor when you factor in the money lost to renting and the money gained in equity, both of which you can now put on the positive side of your financial ledger. Leather? Let's try ledger. Come on, Sidoni. I don't want to edit that, JT. I'm not giving you an option. You have to keep it in. So for many of you out there, your fear of waiting has now got you trying to time the market instead of you actually breaking down the true math of whatever your fears are about. The most valuable thing I can say from years of experience is there is no perfect time to buy. But for almost everyone, and I mean almost everyone, no one is better off waiting and paying rent trying to save money, because the gains that you make if you stop renting, they're exponentially larger the sooner that you start to own. I get it. 2025 is not the perfect time to buy. I mean, I'm not Doc Brown, Marty, and I can't DeLorean you back to 2021 or 2019. So we need to make the best of things here in the present. One of the biggest mistakes I see isn't mistiming the market. It's just missing getting into the market. People have paralysis by analysis. They read every article, binge every podcast. Hey, by the way, thanks for doing that. Make sure you leave a written review and 5 stars. I'd appreciate that. And then they try to game the system like it's Las Vegas. Spoiler alert, in Vegas, the house always wins, unless the house is yours. So if you're planning to buy this home as your primary residence and you're going to stay put for 5 or 10 years, you're not speculating. You're actually investing in a place to live, and the rent replacement strategy is going to help you grow while you build equity. That's a win no matter what the headlines are telling you. So, question, should you buy now or should you wait? If you're ready, yes. If you're not, then get ready. Get in there, do the work, build your credit, evaluate your debt situation with a professional, and then start saving up that down payment. Talk to a unicorn team, but don't sit on the sidelines forever waiting. Especially don't sit there waiting, doing nothing, because then you're preparing for, well, nothing. Question number 2 on the top things asked by wannabe first-time homebuyers. Question number 2 by first-time homebuyers in the last 18 months. Will home prices drop or crash soon? Are you sensing a theme in the first most searched questions out there? So in the past 18 months, would-be buyers frequently search whether home prices are expected to drop in the near future. We already talked about this. I fully empathize with the fact that, most people out there thinking about buying a home, they're desperately hoping and praying for a correction, or better yet, a crash. But if I had $1 for every time that someone told me they were waiting for the housing crash, well, I wouldn't need a mortgage myself. I can tell you that. I've said it over and over again on the podcast. A crash requires inventory and distress, high inventory and major distress. And right now, we've got the opposite. Inventory is redonkulously low, and sellers are the opposite of distressed. I just saw something like $17 trillion worth of equity was reported in the first quarter of 2025. The average homeowner in the United States has over $300,000 worth of equity. That's not distressed, gang. And the bummer is we've got these high interest rates, but buyers, they still want to buy homes, but the sellers aren't flooding the market, even though they've got all that equity. The simple answer to, well, why not? It's because they're sitting on a 3% mortgage and they don't want to mess with that. Where are the cheap homes supposed to come from? Here we are sitting in a position where supply and demand is pent up. That's basically it. It's pent up. We've got too many buyers salivating. So if we see even the slightest dip in interest rates or prices, they're flying out there. And when they come flying out, that means prices will go back up. The people right now who are brave, well-informed buyers, they're the ones that are getting the less competitive deals. And no, I don't actually think we're going to see a crash anytime soon. And straight up right now in June 2025, we are beginning to see prices dip in some areas. And we are beginning to see sellers make some concessions. But this is not signaling the beginning of a downward spiral. And we're not going to be heading towards a crash in 6 months or a year. You're not going to be able to buy a $400,000 house for $325,000 in 2026. It's not going to happen. And I say this to you, not expecting you to trust me just because I have a microphone and a podcast. Trust me, any idiot can have a podcast. Instead, I think that if you go back, you can verify all my past forecasts and data-driven predictions. I'm basically saying if you want to figure out if you should trust me, it's not because I have a podcast. It's because of the content on the podcast that I've put out since 2019, where I've been advising first-time homebuyers for the last 6 years with loads of historical and current data and analytics. Back then, I was telling people who were scared in 2019 because things have been going up since 2012 that it still made mathematical sense for them to buy. And I'm paralleling today, 2025, to kind of the same thing. And then in 2020 on my podcast, everyone was freaking out. We were all freaking out, right? But I was showing buyers homes who thought, you know what, we're going to get through this. And so we were out there in full hazmat suits because I believed that the data would still be on their side. And for most people, if they're going to stay there for 5 or 7 years, I figured we'd have this figured out and prices would go back up. And then you can go back and check out the podcast in 2021 when everyone was peering out of their bunkers. Well, suddenly rates dropped to under 3%. And I screamed so loud into my microphone, I think I broke JT's eardrums. But many people still let the fear and the ignorance hold them back. And remember, ignorance isn't a dirty word on this show. We all have areas where we don't have expertise or sometimes not even casual knowledge, and that's okay. The fear And the not knowing, well, it kept them renting in 2021. Now, imagine a current podcast listener today who heard me in 2019, or maybe they heard me in just 2021, and they could have bought a home in 2021 at 2021 prices with a 2.75 interest rate. Oh, I didn't think about that. What if you're actually out there? Hi. You should really go to howtobuyahome.com and ask for help. Okay, anyway, moving on. If you really are out there, 2021 listener who didn't buy, you're really not going to like where this is going. Or you can go back and check in 2022 when I told the homies that there won't be a post-pandemic crash because we still have low inventory and prices are going to keep going up. And they did. And in 2023, with prices still continuing to jump up, suddenly we hit a record increase in prices, as I told everybody was going to be coming. But I still told people back then, don't freak out if you missed it, because the market's not going to crash, because interest rates are starting to creep up. I still see the low inventory. Well, when the rates started creeping up, suddenly my comment section was full of people telling me, whatever, you scummy realtor, telling everyone to buy a home no matter what. Just wait till interest rate hits 6% and the market tanks. I'm going to sit back and buy deals in all the carnage. Now, I politely replied to all those comments with, hey, man, I get it. You do you. But I'm looking at the inventory numbers and the actual data, and I think that's going to dictate where the market goes. And then later that year, when rates kept going up, I got new comments from new haters who would come in and say, I'm the worst type of person telling everyone they should buy a home because prices are going to tumble and they're going to be able to buy homes hundreds of thousands of dollars less. All it's going to take is rates hitting 7%. Well, then they did and nothing happened. And then other people came in and said, all it takes is rates hitting 8%. Different trolls, same answer. Say it with me now, low inventory. And then at the end of 2024 and early 25, on the podcast, I told people there's still not a crash coming because we still have low inventory. But there was a window of opportunity in the winter of last year and the beginning of this year. I told homies, we can't go back in time, but this could be a frigid, opportune time for you to take advantage. So with all that history, I'm not telling you to listen to me and to buy a home now because I don't have a clue if a crash is or isn't coming. I just want someone to buy a home so that I can pay my mortgage. That's not what's happening. I'm giving all this away for free. It's up to you. You can go out, find your own unicorn. You can go out and do nothing. You can take all this information and have your uncle sell you a home, or you can ask for a unicorn, whatever. I don't care. But my track record is fully on display for all the world to scrutinize. And I'm just curious how many of the other people that are online screaming just defiantly and definitively with the most confidence ever, have they been advising first-time homebuyers for more than 3 months, more than 3 years? Have they been walking you through it with the data? You don't win waiting for the storm to pass by. You win by learning how to move within the weather. Said more plainly, no, it will not financially benefit you to wait for a crash. Period. The end. Curtain. Well, 30 minutes in and I only got 2 out of 20 questions. Not to worry, tune in next week and I'll jump right into question 3. There won't be any preamble and I'm going to spit out as many of the next questions as I can in a 30-minute episode. Part 2 coming next week. Visit How to Buy a Home if you've got questions of your own. And don't forget, you can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuyaHome.com to get started.